Hey guys, I'm Chris,
And I'm Mike.
and welcome back to this week's No Limits to Thriller podcast. Today, we are greeted by, what is this, 5, 6, 7-time return, regular friend of the pod. We have Ward Larsen here. Welcome, Ward.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys, again.
Always great to talk.
Well, we've talked to you a bunch about the Assassin series. We love David Slaton here on the podcast. A little something different this time with Dark Vector, start of something new. But before we get all into that, you're our resident flight enthusiast and pilot. We love to pepper you with questions.
Okay.
So I got to ask, do you have any takes on these recent drone activity over New Jersey, the rest of the East Coast? Any hot takes on this stuff?
You know, I don't. I mean, the FAA hasn't put anything out on this. I really think it's just some people out flying drones, and people love to be in the news, and if you can launch a drone and maybe get a headline, it sets people off, and you get copycats. And I think it's just people out there flying drones, which have gotten bigger and faster and brighter, and so I think that's all it is.
So they are extraterrestrial.
It's a question though that we really have a hard time tracking these things. I mean, sometime it will be something nefarious, and are we going to be able to figure out what it is and figure out where it's come from? So yeah, I mean, it's an issue, but I don't think the ones we've been hearing about lately are any big threat.
Now, in your many years of flying, have you ever experienced like one of those weird UFO anomaly or non-UFO anomalies, whatever they were describing it in that unclassified documents?
No, I have not. I've flown people who swear by it. I flew with the guy who was flying a big 747 over the Amazon, just middle of the night, middle of nowhere. And he swears he saw some lights he could not explain that came up on the airplane. Now, he seemed like a reputable guy, but I wasn't there. I didn't see it. And a lot of Navy guys claim to have seen things lately. There's some odd stuff going on. And I don't know. I don't have an explanation.
Somebody somewhere does. Somebody has an explanation. It's just not us three.
Yeah, and maybe not on this planet, right?
That's true.
Well, this is great fodder for a novel.
Yeah. There was another thing that struck me as it could have been a thriller novel. Did you see in California fighting the wildfires, one of those tanker planes? By the way, those are impressive. I mean, imagine flying one of those.
Yeah.
But it got hit by a civilian drone, or a civilian drone hit it. And I mean, this is an emergency response team. This is crazy that these things are getting in the way.
Yeah, it's just people out flying drones trying to get pictures they can sell to somebody or put on social media. It's just people trying to get attention for various reasons. Hitting a drone like that is not really a big deal. I mean, yes, it damaged the airplane, but it's no worse than hitting a duck, a 5-pound duck, at that speed. It just puts a hole in the wing and it grounds the airplane until they can fix it. It's not anything dire. But it's definitely a nuisance. And I think they came out right afterwards and said, don't fly drones, in these areas. There's a no-fly zone right now for that reason. So,
Scary stuff, man.
Yeah.
Speaking of downing planes, Dark Vector, what a book, ready to be released on February 4th. It's an adventure, and you have to do a lot in this book. We're not only moving on from David Slaton and transitioning to a new protagonist, but like always with Ward Larsen, we get some exciting flight technology, some really cutting edge stuff. So why don't you just tell us how you came to this book, where the inspiration was, and why you went this route?
Yeah, well, the book, David Slaton's been around for 10 books now, I think. I mean, a writer always hits that wall where they have to decide if they're going to age their character and have them progress naturally, or are they going to just keep the same guy, eternally the same age and capabilities? So I'm kind of taking a middle ground. I'm definitely having him age and his life is progressing. He's got a wife and kids now, but, he's been tied up with Anna Sorensen for a while now. She was the director of Special Activities Center at the CIA. And now in the previous book, she moves on in Assassin's Mark and then becomes vice president. And she implies at the very end that she wants Slaton to take over the Special Activities Center. So that's where it went. And I was just thinking it'd be fun to put Slaton in management. He may not like it, and he's probably not going to stay there forever. He's probably going to get out in the field some, kind of a la Gabriel Allon, who even though he's director of Mossad, he somehow always managed to get out in the field. So he's not done behind the rifle scope. But I just thought it'd be fun to bring in some new characters. So I got a rookie in there who's gonna get introduced. Tru Miller.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you where did your inspiration to bring this character to the page come from?
Yeah, I just thought it'd be kind of neat to bring some fresh blood in. And, Slaton is such a professional. He's been doing this for so long. He's like the perfect assassin. And now to have somebody come in at the other end who's definitely got, he gets things done, but who doesn't have that level of experience and who's kind of brash and does crazy things and gets in trouble, but he somehow always gets the job done. So that's kind of almost an antithesis of Slaton. And they're probably not always going to get along as well as you would like, but it's a good counter character, I guess, a counter protagonist.
Rookie, you might say.
A rookie, which, as you know, is part of the book.
Yep. So we are reading a number of series from Mitch Rapp and Scot Harvath, our two main series.
Yeah.
And we're always wondering, when does an author take that leap and move on to that next stage of their character's life? These guys are popping pills. They're still in the field. They're still doing badass stuff. It was quite interesting to see Slaton, in the office, directing things in a different way and not on the op, not downrange. So I think you offer one model of how a character can transition into the upper brass and the struggles of that. We clearly see here the struggles he's facing. Yeah. But I'm sure there's other ways to do it too. So when do you think you first started thinking that you were ready for this? Assassin's Mark definitely, teed it up, but did you already know before that you were starting to not retire him, but kind of move him to the next phase?
The publisher and your editor have a say in that too. And I just was talking to my editor about it, and he said it'd be kind of neat to, bring in new characters, try to think of a way to do that to where they're really getting a lot of time, on the pages. And I also, there's a secondary character, Kai is she's a test pilot, and I wanted to kind of bring her in too, and she won't be as big a player as Tru, but she's going to be in there pretty regularly too. So just she's a test pilot, so with the flying background, it's just kind of an easy thing for me to write, and something I can do that I think will click with readers. So
you're kind of like assembling your a new team that's going to be in books to come. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, you look at like a Tom Clancy series where you had Jack Ryan, and then you had all this the campus, and you've got all the players. I mean, it's not just one guy all the time, which is kind of what it's been for Slaton for a while. So I just wanted to bring in more players on the good guy side rather than just have it a solo operation every time.
Now, was it a conscious choice to name this Dark Vector, as opposed to having, you've been having all of his books be Assassin something? Was that? Okay.
That was a conscious departure. Yes. My publisher wanted to do that after the first book. They it did well, and they wanted to kind of carry on. But so they put Assassin in all the titles, but it's kind of hard to come up with a good title.
It's limiting.
After a while, after we've done 10 of them. And plus I've always felt that it's not that much gunplay and shooting in my books compared to some in the genre.
True.
And I think maybe I lose some readers because it has that in the title. That word assassin makes it sound like a real, gunplay book. And it's not always really that.
I like it. I like the title a lot.
Yeah. Well, do you think dark could become the word of the series moving forward? Is that an option?
We haven't decided. I don't know. I've got a book two I'm going to work on here soon, but we haven't gotten anywhere near a title for that yet. So maybe.
Now, the other word, vector, because if shoot 'em up kind of that gun-toting assassin isn't exactly the main point of your books, I would say it's the flight technology. I always read a Ward Larsen book looking for the next thing. And in this case, I think we have two big ones. Can you take us a little bit down the road of what vector is? Because right there on the cover is that really stealthy-looking plane in the middle of the words.
Yeah. Well, it was done as it's all fictional, but it's a joint venture between China and Russia. And it's always been the case that Russia has always been very good at building engines and the structures of airplanes, and China is getting much better at the software and the circuitry. So I had an idea, well, what if they had a joint venture where they kind of got together and made this stealth fighter? Because they're trying to catch up. Our fighters are still far and away the best. And a lot of it is the software and technology, the missiles, It's not just the actual thrust it's putting out or anything like that. So, they're trying to catch up with our fifth generation fighters. And so I just made up this notional fighter. And then I don't know if you remember, maybe for your time, that back in I think it was the mid-'70s, there was actually a Russian pilot that defected, Viktor Belenko. He took a MiG-25 and he defected to, I believe it was South Korea or maybe Japan with a MiG-25. And so that was kind of an instructive thing too, because that's basically what we're looking at as a Russian defection.
So what makes, I thought it was intriguing that we had this Chinese-Russian collaboration, and that's certainly quite scary because one kind of has the brains, one kind of has the muscle, if you want to oversimplify it that way.
Yeah.
You put the two together, maybe we have a formidable adversary, but planes. So what are some of the actual tech specs or nitty-gritty that would make America nervous or want to keep their eye on and use our spy and intelligence apparatus to keep a handle on tech like this? What is it specifically that Vector gives them an edge about?
Well, for us getting Vector, if we had a defector bring an airplane in like that, when it's in this, the experimental test stage, gives you a huge advantage just to look at it, to have a look at the technology. That's really the big advantage, is just to see what they've got, because this thing has been kept under wraps as best they could. And they're, just to be able to dig into the technology, which is where a lot of the value in a fighter is in the software and technology, the missiles and the weapon systems. And, you can put it on a stand and do a radar cross-section test. So it's just to actually have an airplane like that, you know exactly where your enemy is and where they're going to be in the next, 10 years. So it gives you a huge advantage.
Yeah, I've even heard pilotless technology is going to be the wave of the future in terms of fighter jets and things. I wonder how close we are to that, because I've seen some things online. Even I think it was Elon Musk was throwing this out there. He's like, there's no reason to make new fighter jets. He goes, we're just going to need unmanned capabilities.
He says a lot of things. He says
sure,
cars
fair,
be self-driving too.
Fair.
And
I think
I am not a self-driving car. I'm sorry.
The question is it 3 to 5 years away, or is it 15 to 20 years away?
Close to that. It's probably closer for a fighter. What they're doing right now, that it's going to be out in the next 3 to 5 years, I would say, are these things called loyal wingmen. I don't know if you've heard of those, where it's like an autonomous airplane that flies along with a fighter just to carry bombs and to carry a radar and to be a decoy. And all these things where it's, you don't care if you lose it, but it's a airplane it's a drone basically, but it's controlled by the guy flying the fighter. So yeah, someday there will be, the unmanned fighters. And I don't know if we're ever going to get away from even an optionally manned fighter. We will in time, but I think we're a long ways from that. And as an airline pilot, I hear that too, that they're going to go to, single pilot operations and maybe no pilots. And I've been up there long enough to know you don't want that. Someday, yes, in 20 years, 50 years, but it's a long way off.
All right. Good to hear. Good to hear.
Yeah.
So this other piece of aviation tech, you gotta tell me if this is true. This Star Chaser, this space glider plane where someone you could drop a team anywhere within 3 hours. Is this real?
It's on the drawing board. Yeah.
Okay.
So version, it's a variant of another one. And I'm not, don't hold me to all the exact names. I get Aviation Week and I kind of keep up with this stuff. I think there's a Dream Chaser. And right now they have one version of this vehicle that goes up and delivers supplies to the space station. So,
okay.
Yes. And it can do it either with or without pilots. It can take people or it cannot. And so, yes, it exists right now. And there was talk of making a variant of that for the DOD that could do just what you said and what I did in the book, where you could just deliver a small number of people or equipment anywhere in the world within 3 hours. I mean, it's not easy to do because you've got to put it on a rocket, which is very expensive. You got to have a real good reason, but
right.
We did. So yeah, this is very close to being a real thing.
That was super cool.
But as your plot deals with, you also have to get them out. And this is a one-way trip. So it was interesting how you got yourself out of that conundrum. And readers, you'll have to pick up the book to see how it's done. Very creative. But what that allows you to do is you have this space shuttle essentially take people to the middle of Siberia and you have this awesome set action piece focused around a reservoir, and we get a little bit of that survivalist element. As much as this book is an assassin, spy, CIA guy who has to hunt people down, and as much as it's a flight book and a fighter jet book, it's also a little bit of a survivalist story. What made you go down that route?
Did you guys ever read Louis L'Amour's The Last of the Breed?
No.
It's a really good book. I highly recommend it. It's the only...
Write that down.
Yeah, Louis L'Amour, Last of the Breed. It's one of the few non-Westerns that he wrote. And it's about a United States test pilot. And he wrote this back in the 70s or something. But an American test pilot who somehow is on a test flight and he ends up having to eject or get shot down over Siberia. And this guy is a Native American Indian. And he gets captured and then he escapes real quickly. And he's just in the middle of Siberia. And back then, his only hope of getting out is to get himself out. So he spends months and months and months just walking out of Siberia, as a survivalist. And he's an American Indian and he knows how to hunt. He knows how to make moccasins. He knows how to make a bow and arrow. I mean, he kind of reverts to his self as a kid, when he knew how to do all these things taught by his grandfather. Really cool book. But that was kind of the general idea of being, boom, you're in Siberia, you're totally cut off, and you got to just survive until, you can get out. So,
yeah,
gotta check that out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that aspect.
It's a good book. I've had a lot of other writers that, oh, yeah, I love that.
It kind of makes me think of, what's that story? I know they made a movie. There was a book, real story about the plane in, was it Uruguay? And they became cannibals, and I think some of the people had to eat each other.
I didn't ever see that one, but I know the one, Survival. Is that what it was?
I think so. I started the book. I can't remember it. But yeah, there's some wild stories like that.
We don't go that far. We don't go.
That does not, David Slaton does not start eating people. Although he would if he had to.
Yeah.
This other cast of characters, though, I could see them sticking around because some of the best moments are when the crew's all together and it feels like them against the world. Yeah. Them really against this very deranged Russian. I don't want to give too much away how there's a defector and he has certain links to the Russian Siloviki and the upper classes who have a lot of influence. But it feels like them against the world. So is this a group you might want to keep together? You mentioned you made some other characters you like, not just Kai, but we've got, Diaz, and we even have the defector himself. And I feel like this is a great cast of characters you built.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, yeah, they're definitely on a table, but yeah, most certainly Tru and Kai will be back and Slaton will be back, and we'll see where it takes them. I haven't gotten really deep into the next one yet, but yes, very possibly.
And this reservoir, I feel like a lot of these books almost do borderline too much globetrotting, and we've seen a few that just you're hopping here to there, this continent to that continent. This one felt very singular and grounded. Did you
feel
want?
The setting? Yeah.
You could feel the setting, and this reservoir. It almost comes alive. You feel like you know every nook and cranny. And look at the cover of the book again. Knockout cover. We not only have Vector the plane, but you've got this frozen lake. What was it like crafting this lake and how thick the ice is, and them hiding out for cover in the woods nearby? These little villages too that they have to venture into. Did you have? It seems like you had fun painting this setting.
Yeah, and I hadn't been there, but I did a lot of research. And it's hard to research a place that's that remote. It's funny about the cover. You talk about the airplanes on the cover and the mountains and the ice. When they gave me the first draft, they had all that's there, but the airplane was pointed 45 degrees nose down at 100 feet. No, he's about to crash. You got to move the airplane. Pick his nose up.
That's funny.
Oh.
So you actually have say in what they can do with the covers. So that's good. Good to hear. Some people don't.
Yeah.
So.
Well, it just makes no sense. But
exactly.
It was a fun area to play with. That winter, Siberia, just out in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it's a good character almost. It was part of the book.
Some of my favorite books have been stuff like that. So I'm intrigued. How do you keep all your characters straight? I know we were just. When we interviewed Brad Thor, he mentioned that he has this Rolodex of where he just, he had his son do it might have been during COVID, just write down little tidbits about all the characters, and now he goes back to it. So how do you have a spreadsheet or something?
Yeah, I just make up a list of all the character names and their like rank if they're in the military and just their position. I don't get too much in the character traits. I try to just kind of remember that. And you always, you start at page 1 and read back through and make sure it all gels and makes sense. But yeah, I don't go quite that far as with the Rolodex like Brad might. And Brad's a really good guy, by the way. I know Brad.
Oh, he's the best.
Awesome
He's been
guy.
so good to us when he comes on the pod. You have some good villains too, though. There's as much as there's a network of good guys hiding out, there's a web of bad guys, not who are all on the same page.
Yes.
And one who is a little over the top. I almost am scared if this guy were coming after me, the way he's chasing down, Tru's ski tracks and going into this ski lodge or this village and tracking people down. You went a little dark with the villains.
Yeah, well, the one you're talking about, he's a native and he's a tracker, and he's
Cossack,
he does work. He does work with the military, with the intelligence services, but he's really a kind of a solo operator. And they bring him in because this area, standard methods of searches don't necessarily work. It's such a vast area. And, trying to find one person out there, it helps to have somebody with some local knowledge. So that's why he was brought in. And it turns out in the end, well, you'll see.
The local knowledge is always a lot of fun. We've picked that up, Chris, and talking about Brad Thor, he might throw in a tertiary character or even lower level than that you meet once, but they stick with you. And I kind of feel like you had a couple little interactions, whether it's the old lady in the village, whether it's the guy you encounter at the ski lodge. There's a couple of these little minor characters, but you can almost put yourself in their shoes. Like if this Russian or government agency, I guess the FBI in our case, were coming after you and, you had to face up to them, or they're in your town, in your village with their equipment and very menacing. It kind of gives you that everyday feel, every town feel. It could have been any one of us that these people are coming after.
Yeah,
so
and it gives you a feel for what it's like to live in Russia, too. I mean, I've never lived there, but living under an authoritarian regime like that, especially if you live out in the sticks. I mean, living in Moscow is one thing, but when you live out in the eastern part of Russia, which is huge, like 11 time zones, I think it covers, they really have no idea what's going on at Moscow. They don't get a lot of money. They're really almost, separate regions. They're just kind of encompassed in the Soviet Union, but they're just have very few ties to that. So they don't trust, the authorities at all, the locals. And that's how it is there.
You get the sense of the scale, the way they have to track the plane and try to find it once it goes off grid.
Yeah.
I feel like you viscerally as a reader feel the vast space of the emptiness out there, and you feel the cold. Like you could have called this cold vector as much as it's dark vector.
That's what I was saying. I feel like the setting is really
it's alive.
Is really alive, and you did a good job of making us be present there. And like what Mike said with the characters, like I feel like that's a sign of being investing in like even these tertiary characters, that they make this little impression on you as a reader, that you remember them. Like that's a sign of good work. So
And it's what, book 13, 14 for you? Something like that?
Overall, I mean, I got a couple standalones, including notes. I think
that's true,
this is
Fly by
number
Wire,
17. I have Deep Fake and Cutting Edge and one other one way back.
So this is book 11?
This is book 11 with Slaton, yeah.
With Slaton, okay.
So what's next? You mentioned you're not entirely sure which characters you'll keep around. Do you have a plot or at least a plan for the second Tru book?
A loose one. As you know, Tru has a sister who, that's his kind of motivation. He kind of lost track of his sister. So she, I think, is going to play a part. What happened to her will play a part. Other than that, I haven't got very far. I've got 2 other projects I'm working on. I can't really talk about them just yet, but they're really taking my time. And you'll hear about them. I think you're going to like them a lot. And I should have another Slaton book out, I think, at the end of next year.
Good stuff.
Busy guy.
Yes, very busy.
Well,
I got to
look
quit
forward.
flying.
Yeah, and you're flying, yeah. We always asked you, any cool places you've flown to recently? One time you told us the Caribbean, you had a couple islands.
Yeah, I was in Chicago last week. That's not a very good place. Nothing really. I haven't been flying a lot, honestly. I've been kind of backing off a little because I got some.
How often do you fly?
Probably about 6 or 8 days a month. Yeah, and those will be 2 or 3 day stretches when I do go.
Nice. Well, when you can tell us about those other concepts for books, we want to have you back because Deep Fake, guys, if you haven't read that one either.
One of my favorites.
Great standalone book. Awesome cover. Again, we're going to bring that up. And whether it's the stuff you come up with, David Slaton and now Tru Miller, or any of these other ideas, these one-off ideas that you have in your brain, it really is fun to go on the ride with you. So thanks for writing these books. Thanks for talking to us. And we can't wait to hear about the next one.
All right. Good talking to you guys.